Wah gila sumpah, settingnya tempat kerja berasa kayak gua kerja sumpah, padahal lagi recording YouTube ya. Hello guys, welcome back. Kembali lagi kita ke channel Cheat Codes dengan baju kebanggaan kita. Tunggu dulu ya guys. Nampaknya tas gue menghalangi pandangan kalian. Kita kali ini mau shoot konten game selingan. Aduh mata gue gatel anjir. Jadi antara game yang kita mainin biasanya kita ada upload game selingan biar kalian tidak bosan ya. Hari ini gue nggak ditemani dengan apa-apa, gue hanya ditemani oleh air putih. Harus lebih banyak minum air putih guys. Nampaknya tenggorokan gue masih sakit. Dan juga kita hari ini mau main game yang gue mau kasih tau kalian, tapi gue juga sendiri gue nggak tahu gamenya apaan. Kalian lihat aja ke dalam gamenya, gue nggak akan back bacot, langsung ini dia. Nah ini dia ya gamenya ya. Game kantor yang gue nggak ngerti ngapain, komputer di dalam komputer di dalam komputer, computerception. Kita mulai aja ya. The end is never the end, atau the end is never. Bahasa Inggrisnya agak membingungkan ya. Loadingnya lama juga.
This is the story of a man named Stanley.
Cerita tentang orang bernama Stanley.
Stanley worked for a company in a big building where he was
Jadi kita karyawan nomor 427. Kayak Squid Game ya ada nomornya.
Employee number 427's job was simple. He sat at his desk in room 427 and he pushed buttons on a keyboard.
Berasa kayak gue kerja sehari-hari ya.
Through a monitor on his desk, telling him what buttons to push, how long to push them, and in what order. This is what employee 427 did every day of every month of every year.
Jadi tiap hari dia diperintahkan untuk mengerjakan apa ya?
Considered it soul-rending, Stanley relished every moment that the orders came in, as though he had been made exactly for this job. And Stanley was happy.
Stanley senang ya dengan pekerjaan begini ya.
And then one day something very peculiar
Dan
happened.
suatu hari
Something that would
sesuatu
forever
terjadi.
change Stanley. Something he would never quite forget.
Sesuatu yang terjadi
He
itu
had been at
cukup
his
unik. Dia
desk
nggak
for
akan
nearly
lupa.
an hour when he realized that not one single order had arrived on the monitor for him to follow.
Oh,
No
setelah
one
1
had
jam
showed up to give him instructions, call a meeting,
nggak ada
or even say
yang ini
hi.
game horror atau
Never
apa
in
anjir?
all his years at the company had this happened. This complete isolation. Something was very clearly wrong. Shocked, frozen solid, Stanley found himself unable to move for the longest time. But as he came to his wits and regained his senses, he got up from his desk and stepped out of his office.
Wah grafiknya lumayan ya. Ini kita harus ngapain weh? Ini kita harus ngapain weh?
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean?
Ya anjing, pintunya ketutup dong.
Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Wah, gak bisa balik kita ya. Kita fotokopi kertas, anjing. Berasa gua kerja
No matter
sumpah.
how hard Stanley looked, he couldn't find a trace of his co-workers.
Bentar guys, kita agak turunin resolusi sedikit ya. Kita langsung dari sini aja ya. Nah intinya kan
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
warnanya kuning sendiri. Oh enggak deh, ada beberapa warna kuning. Kita harus kemana ini? Hilang dong semua orang. Hari ini
When
hari
Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
he entered door on his left. masuk kiri, tapi kenapa yang kanan? Udah kita ikutin perintah. Gak bisa dibuka. Gak bisa dibuka. Semuanya gak bisa dibuka, wih. Apa ini?
Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office, hoping he might find an answer there.
How to solve a dispute. Gimana cara menyelesaikan keributan dengan pekerja? Using slide to assure. Memastikan untuk kalau karyawannya semua berjalan dengan baik-baik aja. Wah gila sumpah, settingnya tempat kerja berasa kayak gua kerja sumpah, padahal lagi recording YouTube ya. Not cost efficient, anjir. Who move my desk? Siapa pindahin meja saya, anjir. Please keep the target on the topic of apa di sensor. Meeting schedule. Aduh, mengingatkan tentang gua kerja. Ya kita mending lanjut daripada gua makin keinget tentang hari gua kerja. Aduh nyangkut. Broom closet. Si anjir. Dorongnya.
Stanley stepped into the broom closet, but there was nothing here, so he turned around and got back on track. Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
Bukan. Ini kita mau menuju ruangan bos kita ya. Wah. Executive bathroom. Keren ruangannya ya, gila.
Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life.
Gak ada orang ya.
Shocked, unraveled, Stanley wondered in disbelief who orchestrated this. What dark secret was being held from him? What he could not have known was that the keypad behind the boss's desk guarded the terrible truth that his boss had been keeping from him. And so the boss had assigned it an extra secret PIN number, 2845. But of course, Stanley couldn't possibly have known this. Yet incredibly, by simply pushing random buttons on the keypad, Stanley happened to input the correct code by sheer luck. Amazing. He stepped into the newly opened passageway.
What the freak? Semua itu settingan atau gimana? Wah ini gamenya mulai cik. Gamenya mulai mengacu ke arah-arah horor ya. Aduh kok jadi begini gamenya, anjir. Ngapain ini Stanley-nya coba?
Descending deeper into the building, Stanley realized he felt a bit peculiar. It was a stirring of emotion in his chest, as though he felt more free to think for himself, to question the nature of
Dia
his
mempertanyakan
job.
pekerjaan dia itu ngapain ya?
Now, when for years it had never occurred to him. This question would not go unanswered for long.
Pertanyaan ini akan terjawab sebentar lagi katanya. Aduh, settingnya begini lagi anjir. Duh, males banget sumpah.
Stanley walked straight ahead through the large door that read Mind Control Facility.
Satu pilihannya kabur, satu pilihannya fasilitas mengontrol pikiran ya. Gak ada orang sama sekali.
The lights rose on an enormous room packed with television screens. What horrible secret did this place hold? Stanley thought to himself. Did he have the strength to find out?
Coba kita cari tahu.
Now the monitors jumped to life. their true nature revealed. Each bore the number of an employee in the building, Stanley's co-workers, the lives of so many individuals reduced to images on a screen, and Stanley, one of them, eternally monitored in this place where freedom meant nothing.
Ini apa?
This mind control facility, it was too horrible to believe. It couldn't be true. Had Stanley really been under someone's control all this
427
time?
mana sih nomor
Was this
kita?
the only reason he was happy with his
Oh,
boring
di sana
job?
tuh.
That his
Itu nomor kita.
emotions had been
Emang itu
manipulated to
ruangan kita. Oh
accept it
iya, ruangan
blindly?
kita. Coba kita tes ya. Kita mau
No,
kemana sih sebenarnya?
he refused to believe it. He couldn't accept it. His own life in someone else's control? Never. It was unthinkable.
Kenapa dia?
Wasn't it? Was it even possible?
Kok jadi
Had he
gelap?
truly spent his entire life utterly blind to the world? But here was the proof. The heart of the operation. Controls labeled with emotions. Happy or sad or content. Walking, eating, working. All of it monitored and commanded from this very place. And as the cold reality of his past began to sink in, Stanley decided that this machinery would never again exert its terrible power over another human life. For he would dismantle the controls once and for all.
Apa sih? Offline kok. Katanya kita suruh ngancurin fasilitas ini ya, tapi terus ngapain? Puzzle anjing ya, yang bikin lama. Facility power. Oh. Tuh. Wah, CMD ya, command prompt ya.
And when at last he found the source of the room's power,
Matiin pakai lampu anjing. Terus? Woi,
blackness and a rising chill of uncertainty.
kenapa
Was it
lagi?
over? Yes. He had won. He had defeated the machine. Unshackled himself from someone else's command. Freedom was mere
Apa nih?
moments away.
Pasti ada plot twist nih.
And yet, even as the immense door slowly opened, Stanley reflected on how many puzzles still lay unsolved. Where had his co-workers gone? How had he been freed from the machine's grasp? What other mysteries did this strange building hold? But as sunlight streamed into the chamber, he realized none of this mattered to him, for it was not knowledge or even power that he had been seeking, but happiness. Perhaps his goal had not been to understand, but to let go. No longer would anyone tell him where to go, what to do, or how to feel. Whatever life he lives, it will be his. And that was all he needed to know. It was perhaps the only thing worth knowing.
Terus apa weh?
Stanley stepped through the open door.
What?
Stanley felt the cool breeze upon his skin, the feeling of liberation, the immense possibility of the new path before him.
What?
This
Terus
was
ini udah selesai
exactly
gitu?
the way, right now, that things were meant to happen. And Stanley was happy.
What? Terus selesai gitu? What? Hah? Ngulang? Oh jadi tadi ini endingnya banyak ceritanya ya? Haha, kita coba dengan ending lain dan
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean?
Kita coba cari tahu
Stanley
ya.
decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Kita cari tahu. Ini orang-orang pada kemana, Cuk? Mbak anjir, bikin takut aja anjir.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, this was not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well. Perhaps he wanted to stop by the employee lounge first, just to admire it. Ah, yes, truly a room worth admiring. It had really been worth the detour after all, just to spend a few moments here in this immaculate, beautifully constructed room.
Kita menikmati.
Stanley simply stood here, drinking it all in.
Emang bisa ya? Kita pesen minum, woi, pesen minum, woi, cola.
Yes, really, really worth it being here in the room. A room so utterly captivating that even though all your but eager to get back to business, Stanley took the first open door on his left.
Waduh, cabangnya banyak banget. Ini udah dari kiri. Bisa lurus lagi. Ini game endingnya banyak ya.
Stanley was so bad at following directions, it's incredible he wasn't fired years ago.
Orang kemana semua, itu yang gue pengen cari tahu dulu. Anjir, gudang ya.
Look, Stanley, I think perhaps we've gotten off on the wrong foot here. I'm not your enemy, really, I'm not. I realize that investing your trust in someone else can be difficult, but the fact is that the story has been about nothing but you all this time. There's someone you've been neglecting, Stanley. Someone you've forgotten about. Please, stop trying to make every decision by
Kita
yourself.
disuruh untuk jangan membuat setiap keputusan sendiri.
I'm asking for her.
For her who?
This is it, Stanley. Your chance to redeem yourself. To put your work aside. To let her back into your life. She's been waiting.
Cing.
That's her, Stanley. You need to be the one to do this. To reach out to her.
Kita disuruh angkat telepon. Wait, what?
Oh, Stanley, is that you? Hold on, sweetie. Sorry to keep you waiting. I'm just pulling the bread out of the oven. All right. Okay, there we go. All right, now,
Kita nggak bisa jalan.
I want you to come in and tell me all about your
Cing.
Gotcha. Oh, come on.
Goblok.
Did you actually think you had a loving wife who'd want to commit their life to you? I'm trying to make a point here, Stanley. I'm trying to get you to see something. Come inside. Let me show you what's really going on here. This is a very sad story about the death of a man named Stanley.
Huh? Press 8 on your... 8.
Stanley is quite a boring fellow. He has a job that demands nothing of him, and every button that he pushes is a reminder of the inconsequential nature of his
Kita dibilang
existence.
karyawan yang membosankan. Please press F.
Look at him there, pushing buttons, doing exactly what he's told to do. Now he's pushing a button. Now he's eating lunch. Now he's going home. Now he's coming back to work. One might even feel sorry for him, except that he's chosen this life. But in his mind, he can go on fantastic adventures.
Ini kan gue
From
ikutin
behind
jalan
his
cerita
desk,
gamenya, weh.
Stanley dreamed of
Gue
wild
jadi Stanley-nya
expeditions
gitu.
into the unknown, fantastic
Sialan.
discoveries of new lands. It was wonderful. And each day that he returned to work was a reminder that none of it would ever happen to him. And so he began to fantasize about his own job.
No.
First, he imagined that one day while at work, he stepped up from his desk to realize that all of his co-workers, his boss, everyone in the building had suddenly vanished off the face of the earth. The thought excited him terribly. So he went further. He imagined that he came to 2 open doors and that he could go through either. At last, choice.
Jadi semua ini
It
imajinasi
barely
maksudnya gitu.
even mattered what lay behind each door.
Gila, ini kayak
The
Inception,
mere
anjir.
thought that his decisions would mean something was almost too wonderful to behold.
Press 9.
As he wandered through this fantasy
Untuk
world,
menyiapkan makan
he
malam
began
ya.
to fill it with many possible paths and destinations. Down one path lay an enormous round room with monitors and
Terlalu
mind
banyak narasi ya,
controls.
emang
And
story-nya
down
cukup
another
bagus
was a
sih,
yellow
banyak
line that waved
endingnya.
in many directions. And down another was a game with a baby. And he called it the Stanley Parable.
Aha. Game
It was
imajinasi
such
ya.
a wonderful fantasy, and so in his head he
Dia
relived it
memikirkan
again and
imajinasi karena dia
again
bosan
and again,
kerja apa?
over and over, wishing beyond hope that it would never end, that he might always feel this free.
Dia pengen bebas dari
Surely
kerjaan
there's an
dia.
answer
Buat
down
kalian yang
some
kerja
new
kantoran,
path.
ingat
Mustn't
refreshing
there
ya.
be? Perhaps if he played just one more time.
7.
But there is no answer. How could there possibly be? In reality, all he's doing is pushing the same buttons he always has. Nothing has
Manusia butuh
changed.
kerja tetap ya.
The longer he spends here,
Dia
the
akan
more
melakukan hal yang
invested he
walaupun
gets,
nggak
the more
sama
he
terus, tapi
forgets
akan ada
which
hal yang
life is
sama.
the real one. And I'm trying to tell him this, that in this world he can never be anything but an observer, that as long as he remains here, he's slowly killing himself. But he won't listen to me. He won't stop. Here, watch this. Stanley, the next time the screen asks you to push a button, do not do it.
Gua pencet.
You see? Can he just not hear me? How can I tell him in a way that he'll understand that every second he remains here, he's electing to kill himself? How can I get him to see what I see? How can I make him look at himself? I suppose I can't, not in the way I want him to. But I don't make the rules. I simply play to my intended purpose, the
Balik ke
same as
ruangan
Stanley.
kita.
We're not so different, I suppose. I'll try once more to convey all this to him. I'm compelled to. I must.
Naratornya siapa? Kenapa harus
Perhaps-
memaksa kita?
Well, maybe this time he'll see. Maybe this time. And I tried again. And
Anjir.
Stanley pushed a button. And I tried again. And Stanley pushed a button. And I
What? What the Ini itu ya, looping game ya, nggak ketemu jawabannya karyawan yang kemarin.
Already this was uncomfortable, and Stanley decided that as soon as he found a new space he felt safe in, that he would never leave it again in his life.
Coba kita tes ya.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors,
kita
he
tes.
entered the door on his left.
Kita ikutin sekali. Kita ke ruangan
Yet there was
meeting.
not a single person here
Gak ada
either.
orang di sini.
Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office.
turun
Coming
ya.
to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office. But Stanley just couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss, admitting he had left his post during work hours.
Oh.
He might be fired for that. And in such a competitive economy, why had he taken that risk? All because he believed everyone had vanished. His boss would think he was crazy. And then something occurred to Stanley. Maybe, he thought to himself, maybe I am crazy. All of my co-workers blinking mysteriously out of existence in a single moment
ini
for no
ngeloop ya?
reason at all. None of it made any logical sense. And as Stanley pondered this, he began to make other strange observations. For example, why couldn't he see his feet when he looked down? Why did doors close automatically
What
behind
the
him
freak?
wherever he went? And for that matter, these rooms were starting to look pretty familiar. Were they simply repeating? No, Stanley said to himself, this is all too strange. This can't be real. And at last, he came to the conclusion that had been on the tip of his tongue. He just hadn't found the words for it. I'm dreaming! He yelled.
Katanya ini adalah
This is all
mimpi
a
ya.
dream.
Wah, ini ngulang-ngulang
What
mulu
a
anjir.
relief Stanley felt to have finally found an answer, an explanation. His co-workers weren't actually gone. He wasn't going to lose his job. He wasn't crazy after all. And he thought to himself, I suppose I'll wake up soon. I'll have to go back to
Ngeri ya,
my
ini game
boring
mengeri ya.
real-life job pushing buttons. I may as well enjoy this while I'm still lucid. So, he imagined himself flying and began to gently float above the ground.
Wah.
Then he imagined himself soaring through space on a magical star field, and it too appeared. It was so much fun, and Stanley marveled that he had still not woken up. How was he remaining so lucid? And then perhaps the strangest question of them all
Gila ya.
entered Stanley's head. One he was amazed he hadn't asked himself sooner. Why is there a voice in my head dictating
Nah, iya
everything
ini.
that I'm doing and thinking?
Yang gue mau pertanyakan naratornya
Now the
siapa?
voice was describing itself being considered by Stanley, who found it particularly strange. I'm dreaming about a voice describing me, thinking about how it's describing my thoughts, he thought.
Pusing anjir.
And while
Ini
he
game.
thought it all very odd and wondered if this voice spoke to all people in their dreams, the truth was that, of course, this was not a dream. How could it be? Was Stanley simply deceiving himself? Believing that if he's
Dipikirnya
asleep, he
kita
doesn't have to
tidur
take
kata narasinya.
responsibility
Tadi
for himself?
mimpi anjir.
Stanley is as awake right now as he's ever been in his life. Now, hearing the voice speak these words was quite a shock to Stanley. After all, he knew for certain, beyond a doubt, that this was in fact a dream. Did the voice not see him float and make the magical stars just a moment ago? How else would the voice explain all that? This voice was a part of himself too. Surely, if he could just... He would prove it. He would prove that he was in control, that this was a dream.
Oh, ini mimpi
So he
jadinya.
closed his eyes gently, and he invited himself to wake up.
Anjir.
He felt the cool weight of the blanket on his skin, the press of the mattress on his back, the fresh air of a world outside this one. Let me wake up.
Aduh.
he
Ini
thought to
orangnya
himself.
jadi astral apa
I'm
gimana
through
anjir?
with this dream. I wish it to be over. Let me go back to my job. Let me continue pushing the buttons. Please. It's all I want.
Terus.
I want my apartment and my wife and my job. All I want
Dia
is my
pengen
life
kehidupan
exactly the
dia
way it's always been.
kayak sebelumnya ya.
My life is normal. I am normal. Everything will be fine. I am okay.
What the? Dah. Jangan bilang.
Stanley began screaming.
Anjir.
Please, someone
Kaget
wake me
gua.
up. My name is Stanley. I have a boss. I have an office. I am real. Please, just someone tell me I am real. I must be real. I must be. Can anyone hear my voice? Who am I? Who am I?
Apa sih?
And everything went black.
Aduh.
This is the story of a woman named Mariella.
Siapa lagi nih?
Mariella woke up on a day like any other. She arose, got dressed, gathered her belongings, and walked to her place of work. But on this particular day, her walk was interrupted by the body of a man who had stumbled through town talking and screaming to himself, and then collapsed dead on the sidewalk.
Anjir, kita mati dong.
And although she would soon turn to go call for an ambulance, for just a few brief moments, she considered the strange man. He was obviously crazy. This much she knew. Everyone knows what crazy people look like. And in that moment, she thought to herself how lucky she was to be normal.
Anjir,
I am
Stanley
sane.
meninggal ya.
I am in control of my mind. I know what is real and what isn't. It was comforting to think this, and in a certain way, seeing this man made her feel
Sialan,
better.
kita cuma ditontonin
Then
doang.
she
Kita harusnya
remembered the
ditolong
meeting she had
ambulan ya.
scheduled
Orang
for
nggak
that
punya
day.
empati emang.
The very important people whose impressions of her would affect her career, and by extension, the rest of her life. She had no time for this, so it was only a moment that she stood
Jangan
there,
diliatin doang, weh.
staring
Panggil
down at the
ambulan,
body.
telepon, weh.
And then she turned and ran.
Malah lari si anjir. Oke guys, segitu dulu konten dari game selingan. Ada judulnya tadi apa ya? The Stanley Parable. Nah itu gue juga nggak ngerti ya kenapa Stanley-nya ini. Tapi kita cukup relate dengan kehidupan kita sehari-hari karena kita kerja ya. Kalau gue sih kerjanya begitu. Kalau yang kerja lapangan mungkin nggak merasakan kayak gitu. Cuman gamenya cukup menarik. Endingnya masih ada beberapa lagi. Gue mau explore lagi. Nanti akan ada part lanjutan untuk game The Stanley Parable ini ditunggu aja, nyalakan loncengnya di bawah supaya kalian kalau misalnya kita upload kalian tahu ya. Terus gue mau ngucapin thank you ke lu orang semua yang udah komen, like, dan subscribe. Jangan lupa share channel ini ke teman-teman, kerabat, dan saudara kalian. Oke, segitu dulu dari gue Rafael Kenny di Cheat Codes. Dan jangan lupa kalian sebenarnya bisa pesan baju ini kalau kalian mau ya. Kalian bisa komentar di bawah atau DM gue akan kasih link IG di bawah, gue akan sertakan link. Jadi kalian bisa pesan. Oke, segitu dulu dari gue Rafael Kenny di Cheat Codes. Kita ketemu di konten berikutnya. Dadah.